when would psychometric there we go. When would psychometric assessment be indicated? There is, I believe that all of us have gone through extensive psychometric training. And if you're not going to use the information, or if it is not going to add value, if you have an edu or a clinical psychologist, don't do it, because you might probably not use that, but in other instances it is critical. So we have discussed that in detail in the guidelines itself. When would it be indicated or not? And of course, we rely here on remembering all of your psychometric training and differentiating between what to use it and the process to follow to make sure it's also quite defensible, not only for psychometrics, but collateral, the interview itself, and the preparation. Right. It's not. Sorry, guys, there we go. So, JP, I'm giving over to you at this point in time. Wait, JP.
I take no responsibility for the picture there. This was created by the creative director in this meeting, Natasha and her colleagues there. When we come to the actual report, like we said, the focus was not trying to be comprehensive, though in the end we did write a fairly comprehensive set of guidelines pertaining specifically to the report. The idea was to pull out those things that are really essential and those things that really have something to contribute in terms of especially writing a report of good standard. So the focus then is assisting the IPs, like we've said, to maintain a standard that is really defensible. And okay, we've got biographical factors, we've got work record, we've got aspirations. I'm not going to go into them. What I do want to pull out a little bit is something about psychometric assessment. And I just want to link with what Natasha said. When it comes to writing your report, we find in reports generally, there is a certain opportunity that the industrial psychologists may be missing. And that's especially this group of about 20 to 35-year-old people who do not really have brain damage, neither do they suffer from post-traumatic stress. So that would mean there's probably no other psychologists that would do tests. And still, we need to now make predictions for these people. And there may not be sufficient work records or work experience yet. They may still be busy getting into their careers. So we feel it's really advisable to pull that into your report, to pull psychometrics into your report, if you are faced with a group like that especially. But that is still up to your own judgment, of course. Okay, then we've got available expert opinion. Of course, it's very important that we summarize well and that we give proper attention to other experts. You all know how important that is. And something that we then want to pull out is earnings analysis. And something that goes with that actually is employment trends and statistics. Now, there is an issue that we find in general. We have been challenged, and we will get to that again a little bit later on. But we are challenged that in general, and you will see how the stats support the issue, especially when it comes from the actuaries, that in general, IP reports tend to be somewhat over-optimistic about earnings. And one of the things that may lead to this is the tendency to only use consultant surveys. Now, why is that an issue? I mean, consultant surveys are statistically done well. It's very good information. Why would it be an issue? And what we do, we draw attention to the fact that it is not about the statistical standard of such surveys. It's about the applicability. And that's why we need to look at employment trends and the statistics. Now, I don't want to go, you can read that for yourself. But what one can see is that if you go into our employment stats, and we talk about the formal sector, you must focus on the fact that the formal sector is all registered organizations. And if you look at the formal sector in South Africa, that is actually mostly SMMEs. So most people working in the formal sector are working in SMMEs. The big organizations, of course, form an important part, but they are not the biggest employer. So if you are using consultant surveys in all your reports, you may want to stand back and have a look again at what is happening in your reports. Because if you find that the formal sector is made up mostly of SMMEs, you would know that SMMEs generally do not participate in consultant surveys. So we're drawing your attention to that. Please go and read about that. And with that, Natasha, can I hand back to you? Thank you.
There we go. So thank you so much, JP. And I think what is important that you've highlighted here is that it is once again the incorporation of various sources of information to ensure a defensible and a fair report. Thank you very much for that. I'm struggling to go to the next slide, but we'll get there shortly. So then the next section that we focused on is joint minutes. I'm so sorry, it doesn't work, so I'll just talk you through it at this point in time. So who does joint minutes? Why do we do joint minutes? And just generally, I think it's a meeting of the minds. We may agree, we may not agree, but it is considering all information available, having a discussion with your colleague. And although joint minutes is generally required before a matter goes to trial, I think it also, and tagging on to what Sharon said earlier, it once again helps community, or building a community of practice, because we can learn from one another continuously. And then it really just focuses on it doesn't focus on it. Let me rephrase. It actually just incorporates some of the joint minutes are determined or also prescribed by the practice manual of the High Court. So there's just a reference to that as well, to make sure that everything does, or that all of the documents do comply with that required by the legal system. Okay, expert witness testimony. Trifina, I'm going to try and exit here. I'm going to give over to you. I'm not sure why I can't move on.
Because I can't move on either.
Can you just try again, please? There we go. Thank you. Thank you.
Now I can't see the slides.
Okay, now I've taken them down. You can reshare.
Oh.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay,
And while they're
perfect.
sorting out the slides, please type in any questions, any comments that you have for the team so they can respond while we're all still on the call.
Right, Rafina, I think that's your slide.
Okay. All right. So regarding expert witness testimony, I love quotations. So this one also for me captures the essence of what we need to do and how we need to conduct ourselves in medical legal work. So it's a quotation by Mare, and I don't know if it's a he or a she, I don't remember. But they say that expert witness consultation within the legal system is probably the most public work of a psychologist, and therefore the most likely to bring psychology into disrepute or show its worth to society. So as we partake in this process, we can either do one of two things. Either we can bring disrepute or we can prove the worth of industrial psychology to society. So one of the main things that I would like us to consider, and I think I alluded to it previously, is that the Health Professions Council may have decided that I qualify as an industrial psychologist, for example. But the fact that I am a qualified industrial psychologist does not necessarily imply that I'm an expert in medical legal work, because for me to be an expert or to be regarded as an expert, not only do I have to be suitably qualified, but I also have to be suitably experienced and suitably skilled. And it is not unusual, for example, for the courts to ask for the CV of an IP, or they may ask you in court to outline your qualifications, how long you've been registered, and your experience in the field, so that they can determine whether or not you are able or you are in a position to bring about, expert knowledge into the matter that is at hand. And if the court decides that you are not an expert, you may not be allowed to continue. So the areas of focus, what you will also see in the ethical guidelines is again, our role as the IP, that we are there to assist the court to make a decision based on fairness and objectivity. The Constitution of South Africa says that everyone has the right to a fair hearing or trial, including the right of being able to adduce or to challenge evidence. So it means that when we go to court or when we do these matters and we take a partisan approach, so we are there to represent the interest of a party simply because that party has paid, we are in fact in violation of the Constitution. So it is a very serious matter. So our role in this process is to assist the court to make a decision based on the science of industrial psychology, because they actually need our help. They are not experts in our field. So we are there to provide them with expert knowledge so that they are able to rule fairly in a matter. And if we take on an approach that is partisan, we can actually be challenged. And it's also not impossible for the claimant to challenge us as well, because we will have misrepresented them. Also, what you will find is the issue of professionalism. I'm not going to go too much into it, but obviously you have to be punctual, you have to be prepared, know your report to the minutest detail because of the adversarial nature of the legal system. So the other party may want to discredit you, all sorts of things. So you have to know your report, because they can pick up on one small detail and go to town with it. So familiarize yourself with your report, with all the documents that you have cited in your report. It's also about code decorum, dress code, and all of those things. So one last tip is to always become short and to the point. Don't talk about a whole lot of stories. Be objective, be neutral, be short and to the point. And again, demonstrate your expertise. Bring the science of industrial psychology in answering the legal question. For every matter that you are busy with, there is a legal question that you need to answer. Bring the science of industrial psychology and use it to answer the legal question. And the last point for me is speak about the subject and not for the subject. Like I said, we are not there to take sides. So we are not there to help whatever party to win the case or to get more money, whatever the case may be. Our responsibility is to present the matter in a fair and objective manner to help the court to make a particular ruling. Thank you.
So we've referenced some of the resources, and I think JP will just talk you through that. That is contained in the guidelines as well.
Thank you, Natasha. Trifina has eloquently discussed the demands that we have as expert witnesses. But it is embarrassing and quite concerning if the main receiver of this service, the court, if you see what the judges are saying about us, and Trifina has pulled out this whole aspect of professionalism and what we need to do to be to the point and all the rest. Is that what the judges are getting? That is like what we are hoping for. Trifina has given us the quest that we need to strive for. What are we getting as feedback? And luckily we had the legal people that supported us, so we got a whole list of cases. I don't even know every case in detail, but it is frightening if you look at what the judges are saying, because my impression in general is that we get the feedback that our reports are seen as weak and that there is an unclear analysis. And we are striving, I think, in the guidelines that we have to address this whole issue. Then there is this other group that's very important for us as well. So the court, we put that list of cases, that is like a resource from the court side. There's another resource group that assisted us in getting some perspective on how we are perceived. And there is a certain committee, they are called the Actuarial Damages Committee. Now that is a subset of the Actuarial Society of South Africa. And this subset is made up of actuaries that are in the personal injury and damages world, okay. And they have done certain analysis, which I think we should really take heed of and take note of. Now they did a certain thing, they call it the career ceilings analysis. Now you can go and look at the technical stuff. But what it boils down to, they took, on the one side, they took students, okay? So who are students? That is people who have not yet completed their studies and they are not yet in the world of work. It can even be preschool people. So that's called the student group, okay? On the other side, they took industrial psychology reports of people who are actually already in work. So those reports are influenced by the real world of work. Much more closer to facts, in other words. And what did they discover was the difference between these groups. And they found that the reports, when it comes to people who are still about to enter the world of work, when it comes to us as industrial psychologists, we must look at ourselves because we are over-optimistic. If they compare the groups and they take the 2022 rand value, so it's all in the same rand value, and they take the group of students and they compare it to the actual reports that was influenced by facts, people that are working already, pay slips and all the rest, that tempers the opinions. They found those reports are only 40% of the predictions. So in general, if you take it then, when we do predictions and it is for students and very young people, even preschoolers, and you compare the actual group, and there shouldn't be a difference because it's general groups, you find the actual group of where facts are involved is only 40% of the predicted salaries and earnings of the students. And there is not a good explanation for that other than that there is over-optimism. And you can look, of course, you can follow up on the specific facts, but that is the essence of it. Now, we as industrial psychologists are, of course, hugely influenced by educational psychologists. So in getting to these maybe over-optimistic figures, it's not only us, but we shouldn't shift the blame, but still, I think this is something that should be addressed not only from the IPs, but from the EPs as well. And we may want to sometimes be a bit more cautious when we take certain advice. What did they find in the educational statistics of South Africa? Well, in general, I don't want to go into all of it. I just want to pull out some of the essence. The essence is that when it comes to matriculants, less than half of the people in South Africa eventually, even, you know, if they study after later on in their life, and so they took the whole group of the whole South African population, and the people who do not have matric, the figures that they display, this damages committee, 52%. Okay, so that's their figure. And when it comes to people who's got something more than matric, in other words, at least a certificate, that is only 16%. And you people would know, us as industrial psychologists, when we get educational reports, the picture that we get, that it is quite common for people to pass matric and even then take their matric and translate that into a post-school qualification. Well, that is challenged by the figures that we actually get in the South African facts. So yes, surely we need to do something about that. Okay, so let's move away from that. This challenge that we are vague and that we are unclear, what we've got in the guidelines that can maybe address that is the quest to finally, in a report, put things in a summary that is a table, because a table is probably the most functional way of putting figures in an easy, understandable format. And what we did, we took the earnings assistant software that is available to all of us as industrial psychologists, and we completed an example. We had Monroe actuaries help us with an example, and that example is in the guidelines. So you can have a look at what such an example looks like. We don't say that you must use that software. That's, of course, up to your own judgment. You could use your own initiative and just make a table without using the software. That's also possible. But what the suggestion is, seeing that we get this feedback, that we are unclear, that is probably a good idea to make a good summary that's finally boiling down to the figures. Okay, so that's what we've got as annexure F. Natasha, with that, I want to hand over back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, JP. And with that also, we've covered all of the main headings and all of the main things that we have in our report. And I do want to just agree with Talia and Sharon. I do think that as a profession, we have come a long way since those first horrible judgments, and I believe we will continue as we go along. So we at this point have some time for some questions and answers or comments, and we do really welcome any questions, comments, or anything more that you would like to know, whether it's covered in the guideline or not. Okay. So no questions yet. I'm seeing a hand. Gulshan?
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Natasha and the team for this wonderful, wonderful effort. I'm very impressed to see the work that's gone in and the effort to bring us to a point of credibility. So that's the first thing. My question is perhaps directed more towards JP's section on the earnings and the need to be mindful of using consulting houses or using the grading systems and the salary surveys from the consulting houses. So in the absence of that, I know that work that has been published in the Koch Quantum Yearbook guidelines has also come under fire. Are there any comments around that, any guidelines, any advice?
So, Gulshan, sorry, JP, I'm jumping in here. I think and we've also noted this in the guidelines, is as an IOP, you remain responsible for the data that you use and for being comfortable with the methodology and the validity of that data. So yes, I know there has been, it has come under fire. So it would be up to you as an IOP to decide, having gained as much information as possible, whether you would then continue using that. But other than the consulting houses, there is various sources of information. We know about the status A tables. Of course, you can use actuals if that's available. So I think just the incorporation of various sources of information also makes it perhaps a little bit more balanced if we look at discrepancies between various surveys. Of course, once again, you would consider individual circumstances to also indicate what you're using.
Can I add to that, Natasha? Look, we don't want to promote anybody, okay? But it is so that 21st Century has done very good work in making use of Statistics South Africa. We must take note of the problems in the way that data is gathered by Statistics South Africa. But that is a critical source for us, and at times, of course, it's better to use consultant surveys. But when we don't have consultant surveys, the other most obvious source is Stats SA, and a lot of work at least has been done to do very good analysis by 21st Century. So there are options. There are options. And you must use your judgment. Of course, you can also use minimum salaries, minimum wages. So those are also things that one can use. It is a bit of a problem when it comes to what is available in terms of in South African statistics. If you don't want to use Statistics South Africa, there is not many options then. Thank you.
Karen?
Thanks, Natasha. So for me, listening to Gulshan's question, I think it's an opportunity for us as this IOP community and an invitation as well. We have professional guidelines now. What is the possibility in terms of earnings data? What kind of data are we coming across? What kind of research? What kind of, database can we create in this community? Maybe someone is busy with a PhD on earnings data within, the psycholegal field. So there are opportunities, and let us not shy away from being curious and answering the question, because there's a gap. So what can we do as earnings experts, and what can we do to contribute to our field? So yeah, just an opportunity for us as IOPs.
Absolutely. Could I come in again here, Sharon?
Please, Gulshan.
Thank you so much. I think that's precisely, what I was expecting to hear, because there's an array of earnings data available, and I think a point of conflict comes in largely on joint minutes when different earnings data gets used. And, arguing the case around that to arrive at a conclusion can become quite hairy. And that spills over into court testimony as well, because then you really have to know what earnings data you're using, why you're using it, and how it applies to a specific case. So point taken, there's still a lot more work, I think, that needs to be done around earnings data. And it's not just postulating where a person may enter or may have continued, but where a person seals at the end of the day, and the retirement age at which they seal with the earnings there. So I think it's quite a contentious point, and definitely, I'd be very supportive of any research initiatives that are going on. So thank you very much. That's from my side.
Natasha, can I add? I don't know how to put my hand up.
You can add, Saleh.
So I think the point is come across is that we need to basically use multiple sources of data and benchmark taking everything into consideration, and obviously apply each case differently. So across all the kind of matters, we have to look at the statistics in terms of unemployment and trends, but you obviously have to be case specific, whether you're going to use a formal salary scale, whether you're going to use minimum wage, whether you're going to consider stats information. I've actually just put on the chat, I just wanted to find out, because a lot of people use Analytico and it's based on quite old data. And I know that there is a 2022 census, so it would be great when we can take into account updated stats, where it would be more reflective of the current demographics when it comes to employment. But basically, there is no standard approach. I don't think anyone can really prescribe how other industrial psychologists formulate an opinion, as long as you can substantiate that and consider multiple sources of information, including collateral, not only earnings, salary surveys.
Fully agree. And I see, I've noted Sharon and Gulshan, they are working on research, and Susan Smith has made a very interesting comment. She said that perhaps also liaise with SMME focus groups or interest groups in terms of, well, earnings or just trends in general. Okay, I'm just looking if there's any other questions.
May I please comment on Stats SA for a second?
Yes,
since the earnings is, of course, the place where we are concerned. I think that the concern about the collection of Stats SA data is overstated. We, of course, see the outcome of the postulations by IPs, and other assumptions have much bigger impacts than the potential inaccuracy of the data collection of Stats SA. For example, assuming a minor's educational level, those assumptions that aren't always that well established will have a much bigger impact on maybe the inaccuracy of Stats SA, or using Patterson figures for a minor, for example, is very wrong. So Stats SA might be slightly inaccurate, but I do believe right now it's still the best source. Except, as Talia mentioned, case specifics. If it's someone working in corporate, obviously then corporate earnings are the most important.
Thank you. It's always good to have actuarial specialists also with us. Okay. So again, I think we just get back to be comfortable with your own source of data, and whether it's earnings or not, it doesn't particularly matter. Any source of data you use, make sure that you are comfortable with the veracity of that data and the methodology obtained to get it, because you will have to defend it. Thank you. Is there any, I'm just having a quick look. I don't see anything in the chat. Any other questions or comments?
So well, I just wanted to add on Anna Marie's comment. I think it's up to the industrial psychologist to decide on the methodology, whether it's Stats SA or, and also it's important to know Patterson grading isn't a salary scale. So it's a methodology. So you've got to choose your earnings data, and it's just a methodology. It's got nothing, one is earnings and one is a methodology. You can be, if you were to apply a method, you can apply it across sectors, you can say informal or formal, but it's the data that has to make sense. And you know, so I just don't want to prescribe I use Patterson grading methodology when I do use a minor. So it's up to the industrial psychologist to decide what is best, as long as they can support it in court.
Thank you, Talia. Thank you. Great stuff. Any other comments, questions? See, now you do understand the question or the picture, JP, the brace yourself, earnings are coming, because it's always a good point of discussion to have.
Yeah, what can I say? I think you know what I've been saying, and I think people need to brace themselves for JP. So yes, but yes, it's an important thing. Look, I think we are so happy, and we are. I think we had all these other professions that has been helping us, and surely we must take note of that. And if we find that our predictions are only 40% of reality, surely we must do something.
Thank you. Gulshan, you would like to add?
Yeah, I promise I'm going to say this and then I'm going to leave. I'm very aligned with JP's thinking, because I think it's very important, when we go back to what is the purpose, what is the role of the IP, and it's basically to assist the court in making a decision, and that decision is particularly on earnings, the likely earnings, the loss of earnings specifically. And you know, it doesn't matter how not that it doesn't matter, but I think we must remain true to our purpose and our function. And in providing that earnings information, we've really got to be objective, and whatever methodologies we use, grading systems, salary information, whatever we use, that needs to be, I want to use the word, we need to be circumspect about how we use it and how we apply it in our reports, and how we can debate that amongst each other, so that we do indeed, at the end of the day, arrive at information that assists the court. So whether it's Stats SA, and I think it's situation specific, whether it's Stats SA, whether it's Paramni's, the grading system Paramni's, whether it's the Patterson grading system, whether it's information provided by 21st Century, we've actually got to be mindful of the population group that we benchmarking our postulations on. So that's my parting shots. Thank you very much. I promise not to raise my hand again. Thanks, Natasha.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Natasha. I just wanted to really just, acknowledge the team again and say to colleagues, disagreement is good because it means there's still something to talk about. It means this profession still matters and we can continue to critically look at the work we're doing and to also get feedback and grow from it. So I'm interested to know how people would want to take this work forward. What will be helpful for you? Now you have the professional guidelines. What do you need to make it impactful in the different spaces that you are? JP, Natasha, and Trifina going to do a roadshow? Like, what do you need to help you understand the guidelines a little bit better?
I would love to hear the thoughts. Yes, please do share. I'm always keen for a roadshow, but can we be specific in where we'd like to go? Sightseeing. Okay, so Louise says workshops, actual workshops on its practical application. I think that's a great idea, and we can maybe chat about the various or the academy in SIOPSA. So that's I'm making a note. Thank you, Louise. Any other ways that we can make this more impactful or roll it out to you?
Yeah, we can always use the excuse to go back to Cape Town. I'm already missing Cape Town,
Okay, great stuff. Okay, so we've got the workshops and we've got the HPCSA recommendation. Yes. Thank you.
And Natasha, can I plead again? I think that has helped me so much to rub shoulders with our other professions. I've been saying something that this job is very difficult. You can actually not do it alone. A report that you do is actually to a large extent a bit of a group effort. You get some advice and you get some help. You can hardly do it on your own, eh? So we need the others.
So we've reached the end of our allotted time for today. I think everyone's got quite busy diaries. Okay, thank you, Louise. So again, thank you so much, everyone. It's been so great, I think, building from the work that Barbara and Sharon has done, and also gaining more insight and kind of just not shared thinking, I think broadening our thinking by engaging with not only our IOP colleagues, but also with the other sciences. It's been wonderful, and I look forward to rolling this out, to doing workshops, PSB acknowledgement by the HPCSA, so Louise knows I've been talking to her on this. The document is available on the SIOPSA website. Marissa has shared the link right at the top. And then Marissa, there's been some requests just to share the recording. How will the delegates or the participants be able to get hold of that?
Hello, everybody. I will save the recording on the website, the link to the recording, because it's live on YouTube as well. So we have a YouTube link, and I can then make it available on the website as well, just below the icon where you can download the guidelines. I will save it there for us.
Thank you.
Okay. Will that be fine?
Yes, that's great. Thank you, Marissa.
Oh.
So those are my final thoughts. Just a big thank you. Thank you for joining us today. Please use the guidelines, chat to us, engage. So that's my story. Any final comments from JP, Trifina, Sharon?
Well, for me, it's a step. I mean, it's bringing us a step closer towards professionalizing our work. But clearly, there is a lot of research needed, in the area of earnings. And so hopefully someone will take it up as a doctorate degree or something like that. I'm for one, am considering that. I've started, but perhaps I need to put in some momentum to it.
That's great. That's great.
Very big thank you, colleagues, and well done again, and congratulations. Here's to more work in professionalizing IOPs in the psycholegal field. A very good afternoon to everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Bye.